all caffeinated, all rested, all chatted out? No doubt. Okay, well, never. Okay, welcome all. You're all very welcome back. So we're going to continue on with the second half of today's conference, and we're going to move into the sessions entitled Empowering Our Teams Through Innovation Programs with Caitriona Heffernan. Once again, thank you all for the poll will be launched again, and we will be taking in your suggestions and your feedback on how the network can continue and support you. We're going to move on now to our third speaker. As I was saying, Caitriona is going to join us. Caitriona is from the HSE Spark Innovation Programme, where she leads the programme. She's going to tell us about the programme specifically has engaged teams across the HSE to deliver quality customer service, particularly in a health setting. And again, like the example we just heard from Eoin and Richard, which really benefited from a bottom-up approach. Caitriona has equally taken this approach as well, just again working in the domain of health, supporting our National Health Service. And just a reminder that before we move on to Caitriona's presentation, we value your engagement very much today. So again, Slido code is 1556153, or you can use the QR code. No doubt I'll be very happy to relay your questions to Caitriona when we get to the Q&A session. So without further ado, Caitriona Heffernan, you're very welcome to the stage. No problem.
Good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be here. As just been said, I'm from the Spark Innovation Programme, the HSE Spark Innovation Programme, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do to empower, engage, and I suppose give agency to the staff working across the health sector. So I suppose as a tongue-in-cheek opening slide, if you don't, I'll actually pop it on there myself, beg your pardon. This is a controversial image that's often used in big pharma about how we really don't want to be curing people at all because then we lose customers. But of course, that's not how we behave in the HSE. We'd be delighted if we didn't have any people to be treating at all, if we all lived long, happy lives without any need for healthcare intervention. But we do. And I think it's important to think about, like in all areas of public service, what is the nature of the customer and the customer relationship when it comes to public service? And in health, I suppose traditionally the nature of that transaction had been health, that you come in sick and you leave healthy, and that was the outcome that people wanted, better help, curative measures. But actually that's evolved quite a lot in the last number of years, and certainly now we're seeing that patients want really great experiences of the healthcare service. It's not just about coming out well. They want to have had a good experience while they're under our care. And then of course people are becoming a lot more aware of the fact that they are the payers of the health service. They're the people who pay through taxation for the care that they ultimately deliver. So in terms of the consumer and the transaction around that, that's starting to play a much bigger role and is really coming to the forefront. So the Spark Innovation Programme originally fell under the National Doctors Training and Planning Office, and it was a way to engage doctors in the training programme around becoming agents of innovation and change within the organisation. But thankfully there was a massive outcry from across the rest of the health service, and health and social care professionals, previously known as allied health professionals, so physiotherapists, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, pharmacists, all of those kinds of additional services that you're likely to encounter in the HSE, and also nurses and midwives. So the Office of ONMSD came on board to be our co-collaborators and our co-funders. And so now we offer engagement to all members across the NDTP, the ONMSD, and the Health and Social Care Professionals Office in Ireland. So essentially the programme is open to all healthcare staff working at the front line of healthcare. We deliver this through 7 pillars, and just to very briefly outline them, I'm going to go into detail around the engagement piece and also the network piece. But we deliver through, I beg your pardon, the initiatives piece. We deliver through initiatives a lot of our programme because we believe in learning through doing, and so we give opportunities for our healthcare staff to get involved in change projects, in innovation projects, quality improvement projects. There is a spectrum, and we recognise that innovation falls on that spectrum between something being much more kind of iterative and small tests of change up to something being exceptionally disruptive, new to the world, potential for commercialisation outputs, all and everything in between. So we understand that we need to meet our healthcare workers wherever they are in terms of their innovation journey, what they understand around innovation, where they're at in terms of their capability, their capacity, and what the culture of innovation is across the organisation at large, and also within their own part of the organisation, be that in a hospital environment or clinical setting, wherever it is that they're based. Design is very much at the forefront of what we do at the Spark Innovation Programme, and as the previous speaker mentioned, and I'll also say that Julianne is going to give us much more of a run through around design later, so I won't emphasise that, but it is very difficult to talk about the Spark programme without talking about design, because it really is central. It's not just a methodology that we use to deliver innovation, it really is our North Star around how we go about transformation and change within the Spark programme. And it is that whole idea of the centricity of the patient and trying to change. I think previously in healthcare we had thought of ourselves as being very patient-centred. We talk a lot about patient-centred care, but actually what we were doing was deciding what we have available as an organisation and how we would essentially, segment that out and divide it out amongst our audience, our customers, our patients, our service users. But now we're taking that a different approach and we're turning it on its head, as was mentioned earlier this morning, and thinking about what do people need from their health service. What do they want? What do they like? What way can we change services in order to meet their needs and to build from that part? So to develop what we're delivering in terms of service provision from the patient's perspective as opposed from the organisation's perspective. So I won't go into any more detail, but just to say that is very much underpinning everything we do at the Spark Innovation Programme. I don't have time to go into all the other details, but if somebody wants to ask me something about any of the other pillars, you're very welcome to. But I'll move on. And if it's okay, I might just show a very quick video at this point. I kind of skipped over there because it slipped out of my slides. But I think it's really important. We talked earlier today about who the customer is. So I talked about what the customer wants. But in terms of who the customer is, as a programme, we have the customers of our health service, the people who are there at the front line. They're our customers of what the programme has to offer, who are then delivering services to the customers at the front line, those people who receive services. So I just wanted to show a very quick video because I think it really encapsulates what the programme offers both to the people who engage with it at the front line and also the people who benefit from it, who are receiving that care. So if you don't mind.
So my name is Norma Capeless. I'm an advanced nurse practitioner in heart failure here in University Hospital in Waterford.
My name is Dr. Chris Dorahan. I'm a senior medical physicist and I've been at St James's Hospital for the last 10 years.
I'm Richard Skelly. I'm an anaesthetic registrar in my final year and I'm currently working in St Vincent's Hospital.
Over the past 7 years we've been working on design projects, and at one point we got to a stage where we couldn't progress without some sort of external input.
So as NCHDs, we move around hospitals every 6 months to a year and we have a fresh perspective on issues that we might see in each hospital. So we're in a prime position to carry out innovation projects.
Well, I really believe that all nurses, it's instinct to come up with innovative ideas. Every day we're faced with problems.
The thing that I found most difficult with the heart failure was I couldn't know energy, couldn't do any work. It made me feel very kind of low. I wasn't feeling the best of myself and that.
There's so many great ideas I think get lost because people just don't know where to go with the ideas or how to progress forward with them.
The word innovation can appear to be something maybe just for the elite, whereas really what it's about is just about good ideas meeting the real user needs at the front line.
Initially, you just don't have any time while you're working, and then how to take the project off the ground, how to start, who to meet and how to go about it, and the Spark workshops really helped me with that.
The Spark Innovation Programme is a national programme run by the HSE. It's a group of healthcare workers, administrative staff and designers that make up a frontline innovation arm of the HSE. It is funded by the National Doctors Training and Planning, the Office of Nursing and Midwifery, Health and Social Care Professionals and the Quality Improvement Team.
The Spark Innovation Programme offers mentorship, design expertise and networking opportunities, as well as startup capital in order to get your project off the ground.
Spark Ignite was absolutely brilliant. Help with my project. A simple app. The patient would put in their daily weight that would help support them in identifying weight increase and avoid hospital admission.
Spark also helped us to engage with and connect with the wider national ecosystem in terms of innovation, so that's been really helpful to help develop and really grow the innovation work.
It helped me interact with design thinking, helped me with networking, and there was also funding available after a successful application.
Taught you skills of how to do pitching, how to put business cases together, how to tell somebody your idea in a very short time frame, which is so important in the healthcare settings.
So one of the innovation projects we've been able to do at the hospital involved simply patients being able to get round and to find their different various clinics. So we worked with the clinical photography department to have an app developed. We were able to realise that, and it's in use at the moment.
So they gave me skills that I wouldn't ever have used before, but I definitely have used them since and will continue to use them.
Yeah, the difference the app has made for me is that it helps me an awful lot to keep track of my weight and everything. I'm very grateful to Norma and the Spark programme for giving me this app.
Spark finds it so inspiring that these healthcare workers are consistently under pressure, but they are so determined and passionate about improving things for their patients and for their practice.
If you have a problem and a solution that can improve patient care, staff engagement, or experience overall, we'd love to hear from you at Spark.
Together, we can design a better future.
Thank you. And I suppose in terms of another customer element, you met Rachel and Ivan there, who are fellows with the programme. So that's how the programme operates, that we bring in fellows from a doctor, a nurse or midwife, or a member of the health and social care professions every year, and they help to deliver the programme. So they come in, they learn more about innovation, they represent their core areas, and then they're delivered back into practice, having that kind of leadership element, that management element around how you roll out innovation as well. So we're kind of building those capabilities and building that ecosystem back out into the system after every year when the fellowships roll over. So as I said, I'm just going to focus on the engagement piece and the initiatives. So really, in terms of engagement, it's about that creating of touch points for people to get involved with the programme. And that can look very different in terms of maybe education. We run, as I said, a number of initiatives, and I'll get to that in a moment. We like to think, as Norma mentioned there, that when somebody comes into the programme and they engage in one of our initiatives, that whether or not they're successful in receiving seed funding to progress their idea to the next stage, they'll always leave the programme having learned more about ideas assessments, needs assessments. How do we know a good idea is a great idea, that it's an idea that's implementable, that it's an idea that's sustainable? And so we try to teach that through the education component. We also offer that mentorship where we have, I suppose, allotted people from the programme to high impact, high potential projects to be able to bring them through. And again, not to harp too much on about design, but we actually have some of the first designers in residence that have been funded through the Spark programme actually now sitting in healthcare institutions leading out on design projects, and they're available as well centrally for us to be able to put them in touch with other projects that are happening around the country that need that type of design expertise. In terms of the initiatives that we run, the Spark Seed is kind of our entry-level initiative, and that's where people can pitch ideas and they can have funding delivered to them for up to €3,000 to progress their idea further, build prototype, concept validation, whatever it is, wherever they're at in terms of the innovation journey, will help them to move on to the next stage with that seed investment. And I suppose over the last number of years, that's expanded broader now to having that mentorship element and having that design expertise, lean expertise, whatever it is that's needed. Sometimes a health economist to come in to actually give that financial oversight and to be able to build the business case around what their proposals are. Spark Ignite, as Norma mentioned, she came through the Spark Ignite programme, and that's specifically for ideas that have commercialisation potential. And we work closely with the Health Innovation Hub Ireland then to channel those ideas out, to go through COM funds and feasibility funds in Enterprise Ireland if there is a market available for the product that they're trying to develop. And then I'll just put together the Hospital Innovation Fund and the Community Innovation Fund. And this was a new transition for us and a movement into, I suppose, bigger funding. Applicants could apply for up to €60,000 to bring their ideas forward. And the way that we protected that, or ring-fenced it, or gate-kept it, was around having hospital buy-in, having management buy-in, that this idea is feasible, viable, it can be delivered in the different sites. And so we had, I suppose, that kind of assurance that the idea wasn't going to meet a barrier as soon as it landed back into its organisation with money in its pocket. So that was a new way of working for us that has proven very successful so far. And I won't go into design on the front line because I'm keeping an eye here. I'm being very diligent looking at my timing. I think it's really important, and it's lovely to talk at events like this because we're often asked to talk about value proposition in terms of cost saving. And although there is many cost savings that come from the projects that we get involved in the Spark Innovation Programme, and I'll mention those savings in a moment, actually the reason that frontline workers come to us to look for funding or to look for support to develop their ideas, it's always about their patients. It's always about the people that they're meeting on a day-to-day basis that they feel are not getting what they need to get from the service, or they're frustrated that they're not able to supply them with the new way of working or the best practice available in order to meet their needs. So it actually works in our favour that we have this kind of remit to deliver excellence in terms of customer service and customer excellence, because realistically, frontline workers don't want to deliver change for the organisation, I'm sorry to say. They want to deliver change for their patients. That's where their priorities are, and that is what motivates them. And we can see that even through the pandemic, and you know that the health service is really crippled in terms of recruitment and retention at the moment. And yet, year on year, the number of applications we get for funding for this through SEED, through Spark Ignite, through the Hospital Innovation Fund, the Community Innovation Fund, it goes up and up and up. And it's because that motivation to care for patients and give them an excellent experience and excellent clinical outcomes never goes away and actually gets better and better, we find, as the years go on. So you can see, there's nothing as bad as somebody reading slides for you. So you can read yourselves, but I really like the slide here, the quote here on the right, about how somebody talked about, some ideas, how to know that some ideas are successful and some not. The workshop, they're talking about the workshops that go with the Spark Seed programme, is what they needed during the 15 years of their career, where they've been down in the trenches, wanting to deliver great change, wanting to deliver innovations, wanting to deliver quality improvements, and not feeling like they had anywhere to go, not feeling they had the capability to do that, they had the skills, they had the knowledge, the access to maybe more expertise, because we know that innovation is not a lone genius sport anymore. It's a team sport. Nobody can do it all in terms of the capabilities that are required to deliver innovation. So I think it's just a lovely insight there around how I felt nobody took me seriously, and I'm very serious. I've devoted my career to my patients, but people weren't taking that seriously, and thank you for those valuable skills that they need to make a difference and be heard. That's what frontline workers want. They want agency, they want their voices to be heard at the tables. They know what patients need, and they have the capacity, the capability, unfortunately not always the capacity, to deliver it. And so that's really what the programme is there to try to support. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about some of our success stories, and I suppose relative to the amount of investment that we make, the types of outputs that we get or the outcomes that we get from those investments. So I won't go through them all because, again, time is against us, but we'll say at the end of the spectrum where we're looking purely at that customer experience on the right-hand side there, it might be difficult to see, but that gentleman is being fitted for a prosthetic nose after having a life-changing facial surgery. And heretofore, you may have to wait kind of 9 to 12 months to have a nose prosthesis built for you to actually fit your face, because there is a process involved in terms of the chemotherapy that would happen afterwards. And this project that's happening at St. James's, which is design-led, now allows for patients to have their nose, their prosthetic nose, 3D printed for them over the course of their recovery journey while their facial features are changing and settling after this very catastrophic surgery in their facial area. The little girl on the left-hand side represents a project that's running through Children's Health Ireland about home hydration or hydration in the home. So often children and adults, but in this case children, who are experiencing chemotherapy will need to go into the hospital to be rehydrated if their bloods are showing that they have a lot of dehydration in their system secondary to those drugs, and where previously the patient would have to be admitted and kept because they were receiving fluids through TPN or through IV fluids. Now we're able to bring them in, get them set up, and have them sent home and have them tracked and monitored remotely, so that they are not digitally, unfortunately, yet. It's still person remote monitoring, so that they don't have to be out of their home, that their parents don't have to be away from work. We're often now working from the home, so a lot of their parents will report they're able to continue working, they're able to look after the child in their home environment, as opposed to totally turning the life upside down of the entire family, where a parent is taken from wherever they are in the country and having to sit in Crumlin or wherever it is that they're receiving their treatment, really, I suppose, dislocated from their support network. And so that's just a fantastic change in experience for our patients. And maybe just to give you a little taste then of how that better patient experience also actually delivers excellence in terms of cost saving and value for money. The trauma image down here, Trauma Doc was a small project, or what looked to be a small project, that somebody came to us, a emergency medicine doctor came to us a few years ago to look for support around this, and he wanted €1,500 to help him to develop what he had validated as a response to polytrauma. So when a patient arrives into the emergency department having had a car accident or an accident that results in polytrauma, multiple traumas, when they arrive into the ED, the managing clinicians need to make decisions about the when to deliver fluids, when to do particular scans, when to deliver certain drugs, and that wasn't standardised across the service. And it was often written on, because we don't have electronic health records in many of our hospitals, written on pieces of paper and forms. And so he looked for funding of €1,500 to essentially validate his form and print it on wipeable paper, because unfortunately in the ED department, that is often something that you'll need to have. And he rolled it out. His $1,500 also covered him to travel to the trauma receiving hospitals around the country so that this could be scaled and spread to all of the other hospitals. And he's delivering savings of up to $300,000 per patient per year when this is used, because I suppose by delivering it in this mode and having this standardisation and having this form available in the ED means that patients are less likely to end up in ICU. They're less likely to stay in ICU for longer, for the same period of time, and they have better outcomes. So it's an incredible cost saving. And Norma, who you met, is a very fantastic character who developed the fluid tracking app. Very, very simple piece of technology, and she looked for €3,000 of an investment, and she's saving €15,000 per person per year that uses that app. And it's just been delivered now into a national programme for the management of heart disease. So that's some really nice winning stories. Oh, I'm just hitting my 20 minutes, so very, very quickly. I just wanted to kind of outline, I suppose, the challenges. It sounds really great, and it's really exciting work, and it's very rewarding work. People are very motivated to be able to deliver this kind of improvement into the system, but there's no doubt that there are challenges. Defining value is a big problem. Do we define value as innovation as a process, people learning about innovation, engaging in innovation practice, learning more about it, failing the first time and coming back the second time with new insights, new knowledge to be able to have a go at it the second time? Or is it all about outputs? Is it all about that we're looking for a commercialisation of projects, or those other pieces that are much higher, much more difficult to guarantee as a programme? So it is sometimes difficult to communicate that we need to be delivering this, I suppose, this innovating engine, not innovation engine, innovating engine, where we're constantly in the process of innovating, we're learning about it, we're building capability, we're building capacity around it, and that's where the true value is in what is delivered in the programme. Getting buy-in, I'm sure we all share that difficulty. It can be difficult. I'm inspired by my colleagues this morning talking about their trauma-informed care and intervention approach, that there was obviously a real groundswell of activity and motivation behind that, but it can be difficult. Some people feel that innovation management, people, decision makers, feel that innovation is nice to have, but they don't want it distracting from the day-to-day business, and that's a hard one to bring home, and it kind of relates back to what I talked about, defining value, about what it really means. And then of course scaling and spreading, I suppose that is always difficult, knowing that a particular improvement or innovation that's been delivered and validated and verified in one setting, how do we socialise that? How do we let other hospitals, other clinical environments know that that's happened and it's happened successfully and it's available for them to scale as well? That's always going to be a problem for us, or rather it is a problem for us at the moment, but it's something that we're trying to address as we go forward. So I suppose that then the question really is, are we enabling our people to deliver service excellence? We hope we are. I hope that giving you this short overview of what the Spark Innovation Programme, I suppose, shows the potential for what happens when we engage our staff around delivering innovation and the type of improvement and the type of impact that can have on customer service and customer excellence as we go forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much for that, Caitriona. It's fantastic to hear that there is this level of commitment to customer service equally within the health setting. I think today, like, we've heard a lot about customer experience, but it is so important to take stock of, again, this in the HSE context as well, specifically. And I think today we've heard a lot of different ways about how we can go about doing that. But I really like the terminology capture, cultivate and celebrate. Really important. That's a really, really nice way of putting it, and it kind of comes back to probably the working ethos again of HSE Spark. And then I suppose particularly in this context, a lot of us get caught up in how the day-to-day work that we do, we're so preoccupied about what we work on, and then all of a sudden it's like we have to come in and like, okay, we have to innovate, we have to come up with an idea. So we would actually have a question from this too, and kind of particularly in the context of healthcare, that there are so many kind of expertise on our healthcare staff. There's a lot of burden on them. They have so much to work with, and everybody knows the stories. Kind of, how do we get over the burden? Was the terminology somebody said to us earlier on, that we don't have time? How do you assess that, particularly in a healthcare setting?
Well, what's interesting is that that's not our experience. So frontline workers are not saying they don't have time to come to us with the ideas. It can sometimes be difficult, obviously, for them to implement them and to get that kind of sustained change over time. It's more at middle management and upper management that we find that you get we don't have time to be innovating, we're very busy. And releasing that capacity is always going to be a difficulty. And we've tried to, I suppose, skirt that carefully, whereas in the past we'll say the workshops that the testimonials were mentioning happened outside of work hours, and this year for the first time they now happen inside of work hours, and that was an experiment on our part because we didn't know if people would actually be released to be able to engage in the work. But I suppose we feel really strongly about this concept of duality of role, that it's so important that when people come to work they should spend obviously a vast majority of their time delivering service, saving people's lives, curing them, making them better. But there should always be that part that is reserved for, but how could we do it better next week and next year and in 10 years' time? What's coming down the line? How can we plan for that? And so, building that capacity piece into the expectations of how people work, unfortunately, to deliver slack. We need some slack in the system so that people have time and space to reflect on their day, what didn't go so well, to have those conversations over coffee break. That doesn't happen anymore. People are so busy. The water cooler conversations where people realise they share problems or that they have maybe capabilities that could cross over. I always like to say, innovation happens at the intersections. So it's often when you get those people coming together and you have an intersection of ideas, skills, capabilities, network, whatever it is, that's actually what delivers change. But certainly at the front line, they're saying we want more capacity. We do have enough time to come up with those ideas, but then you need to support us to be able to move it on through.
Yeah, look, I don't think anyone can doubt that it takes experience to kind of harness, to kind of deliver. It's not easily done, but again, providing that space is imperative to kind of be able to improve our outputs for customer service, and especially in a healthcare setting anyway. And you spoke a little bit about funding and kind of Spark, especially like we've supported with our own Public Service Innovation Fund, and we're delighted to do so. And then like every year though, we get applications, and they're all fantastic ideas. Genuinely, like everyone is motivated by a problem that they have, and no doubt the same goes for Spark. So when you have people who apply, and obviously you have certain thresholds, and you've selected your successful projects, how do you keep those who are not selected kind of motivated? Because again, their experience is valid, and what they're bringing forward is valid, but there maybe something was off that didn't get funding. How do you kind of keep those guys supported and motivated kind of going forward post that decision?
Yeah, and I suppose that is why we changed the model around the Spark seed, which initially was just, it was quite binary. You were either funded or you were not funded. And as much as we sent them a very polite, sorry you weren't successful on this occasion, there was a time when that was where the interaction ended. But then we felt that actually not only did they deserve more out of it in terms of what their own outcome was and what their experience was of engaging with the programme, and also it's very frustrating to be coming all the time with an idea and be told no, and not understanding why. It's really important, and that goes at every level. So even if you have innovation programs that happen within hospitals where they're directly looking to their own staff, not for us at the Spark level, but even within the hospital, you have to be really clear either about what type of ideas you're looking for, or you have to be clear about the value that you're putting on the numbers game, that you keep coming with your ideas, and at some point project, that idea will get honed and will get, it will be a really high quality piece that has high potential for high impact. But I suppose that's why the programme has expanded now to offer that mentorship piece. We give more written feedback and also signposting. So, sometimes people's ideas are not successful for funding because maybe they don't sit within what is a very broad category of innovation in our sense, but we may signpost them to other parts of the organisation. It may have already been done in another site, and we might connect them as a network so that they can maybe replicate something that's happened in another environment. But we certainly are getting much more mindful about what that experience is for the unsuccessful, if we talk about it in terms of investment, and we're, I suppose, redefining what is investment. Sometimes the investment in them is money, sometimes the investment is feedback, sometimes the investment is mentorship, sometimes it's signposting, and they're all valid forms of investment from our perspective.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially I think even just something about what you're saying there is that the benefit of having something like this internally working like this, that you see kind of spread around the broader ecosystem in HSE what is going on, and you will be able to kind of determine what is duplication of effort, and that can be a big problem as well, that there are so many things going on over there that we're not aware of that could be the answer to our problem potentially down the road working in Waterford, but could equally be the solution to the problem that we have in Donegal. Yes. And that's the real value of having something like this that can see from a higher level what is going on the ground. And you're right that it is really important to keep those people kind of motivated post kind of decision point, and that just because it no now does not mean a no next time, to hone it and come back. It's the same again, like we work with the Innovation Fund, we see the same thing kind of over again, but it's kind of partnering with people where possible, encouraging collaboration and scalability, transferability outside of the HSE where possible, which is certainly really beneficial as well. You spoke. It was fantastic to see all the kind of the qualitative kind of that we heard from the people who are working in this arena. I mean, it's like I think they're people working in the healthcare setting. I think there's no one that you really rally behind as much when you hear their testimonials about what they do as other people. So you can really see that. Can you tell us a little bit more kind of about the other metrics, I suppose, of success involved in the Spark programme? I mean, look, the qualitative one again is very apparent. Can you tell us a little bit about how you measure kind of in another sense, kind of outside of that arena, the value of Spark?
Yeah, I suppose the value proposition is always in question. We're always wondering where are we delivering value and how. So I would definitely say that the programme is very young. I think that's the first thing to say. It's only been around since 2017, I think. Yeah, 2017. And really it started kind of within a programme as a small mechanism to help people to get going. It was very exploratory at first, and actually it's only now that we've had so many positive, more qualitative bits of feedback that we're starting to look at, that's why we now have a research pillar, where we've introduced that into what we're doing, because we understand that we need to capture those metrics. So we obviously, a metric that we generally capture is around cost savings. So, relative to the investment, what's the return on that investment? And so we've brought in a lot of expertise around health economics and using health economists to actually really qualify and quantify exactly where the savings are, because sometimes it can appear that they can be quite black and white figures. We invested this and we got this kind of return, but actually there's also kind of opportunity cost that has to be looked at. While people were working on this area of improvement, what happened to the patients that weren't being seen? Did we just make a waiting list somewhere else longer? So I suppose we're becoming more mindful of the need to have those better metrics. Heretofore, we have relied heavily on the qualitative feedback and then those really numerical pieces around value for money. But it's also reassuring to see that when we're asked to pitch for funding centrally within government, that they now don't just want to know about return on investment in terms of finance. They want to know about impact. How many people are going to not be on that waiting list anymore if we do this type of innovation? So I suppose that's where we measure at the moment, but certainly there's room for improvement there, and that is very much on our agenda.
Yeah, look, you can't. It's a story of two sides anyway. I don't think you can explain the full story of kind of this kind of program without looking at both. It wouldn't make sense to not look at qualitative if you're just looking at the raw numbers anyway, and that health setting especially cannot operate like that anyway. We have a question from someone online asking, is Spark for clinical staff only, or is it kind of expanded out further?
Well, we just had that conversation the other day. Officially, I suppose we have no problem with who applies to the Spark programme, but we also have to be realistic that our investors want to know, so the Office of ONMSD, the Office of HSCP and the NGTB, they want to know what has been returned on for their investment in the programme. So they obviously want their own representatives, their people on the ground to get the best use of the money that they've invested. So saying that, as I mentioned, innovation is not alone, the lone genius days are over. It is much more about the team. And so what we've kind of landed on is that essentially any great innovation is rarely an individual person. There's usually a team involved. So even if it is somebody from IT or if it's somebody from finance or whoever it is that's bringing that idea, it's going to impact the clinical front line anyway. So we kind of say as long as they have a clinical champion on their team and there's demonstrated potential benefit for patients at the front line who are served by doctors, nurses, midwives and health and social care professionals, then that's fine by us.
That's great. Great to see that it's kind of open to kind of more than just, I suppose, clinical side, and that there are kind of a dual kind of system operating within it, and both equally supporting kind of patient care in their own separate ways. So it's important to account for both sides of kind of the two streams working in the organisation. Okay, folks, throw it out to the floor. Perfect, fantastic. We have a question there. If we can get a mic over to this gentleman, if you wouldn't mind just introducing your name, when we make it to you.
Hello, my name is Tom O'Connell. I'm from Revenue. Thanks, Caitriona, for that very interesting presentation. Just a very practical, probably, question for you. Obviously, the HSE, you're operating many different buildings. People are carrying out different operations, if you pardon the pun. Just how do you get that reach out to all those frontline in different areas about the Spark scheme? Be really interested to know. Thank you.
It's very challenging. We have communications in the health service. Obviously, they're inundated with the necessity to send out what's often very important, public health guidelines. So the difficulty we find using our internal communications is that on the one hand you're reading about new coloured bins for the disposal of syringes, and then you're getting a memo from the CEO around a change, and then you're getting something through from the Spark programme, and then there's a lot of noise around communications. So actually, although we use the communication mechanisms that are available to us in the HSE, it's actually word of mouth. It's people on the ground talking to one another. Social media, we're very active on social media. We were quite nervous when Elon Musk potentially was going to close down Twitter on us overnight, because that's where we have a lot of our following. So there's no doubt that there's limits to what we're able to communicate. And I suppose really, if you were asking me what are we trying to communicate when we're talking to the front line, it's that innovation, it's people like us, not me, us, people like us, people who are delivering patients through the ambulance service, people who are delivering babies in the birthing suites. It's people like us who deliver innovation, and so it's trying to get that messaging across. And we find that social media is very kind of usable, and that's I suppose primarily where we get our word out. But we do use those mechanisms that were within the health service as well. Our staff mail. We have a publication that goes out quarterly from the HSE. We have our own publications. We have our own mailing list. And really, I would say that any organisation can only tolerate a certain proportion of change and innovation at any one time. So actually, in a way, you don't need 100% of the people to be actively engaged in innovation. You want them to be interested in it. You want them to adopt innovation. So at least you want them to be, they think it's a good idea and they're open to it. But actually, we feel that we've got a good number of people. We're always welcoming more, but I suppose it isn't an ambition that we have applicants from every single member of the health service. I hope that answers your question. It's not perfect. Certainly, communications is an issue for all of us, I think, in public service, because there's so much noise in the organisation in general about so many different things, but that's how we manage it. Thanks, Tom.
That's great. Another question from Margaret, the front. I'll repeat. Go ahead, Jade's popping along now.
Oh, they can hear me perfectly. I actually really enjoyed that. Thanks very much. I was really interested by what you said about building an innovating engine rather than an innovation engine. We're looking at innovation within our organisation at the moment and the structures around it and how do we enable it and ensure, as you were talking about there, that everybody who has an idea gets captured and it's brought into place. So I'm just wondering, when you talk about that innovating engine, what are the pillars of that? How do you ensure that it is an active verb rather than a noun?
I suppose it covers so many areas. I talked about the challenges that we have around buy-in, and that I suppose that's where it starts, that people need to understand that it is about actively pursuing innovation, that you have to set up the landscape to be open to innovation. And then this is how corporation works, this is how industry works, that it is a numbers game. You know, you bring in idea after idea after idea after idea, and eventually you either hone, you narrow, you focus, or somebody hits something breakthrough that actually makes it to market. So I suppose it is that idea of, at every level, recognising that the front line need to be engaged in innovation activity, they need to have capability, capacity building, the culture needs to be there. Middle management need to free up their frontline people in order to be able to engage with this. And then at the top level, either within organisations individually or within the national organisation, that cultural piece has to be there as well, that they're buying into that release of staff. This is a business we're engaged in. We want to be innovating. And so I think by having that idea of the innovating engine, innovation is a natural output of that. You know, but going after innovation as a thing is actually a very high ceiling to set as well for entry-level innovators, people who want to come in, and the idea is that you're coming in order to deliver an innovation. That's obviously the pinnacle of things. That's where we want to go. We want everyone to be delivering innovation. But that's not realistic in terms of an ask. And it's not necessary as well, because again, as I said, that innovation happening at the intersections, you often need, if you have that innovating engine humming, and there's lots of activity going on, there's conversations, there's events like this, bringing people together, where you see those alignments and you think, oh, I'm actually working in this area and I'm missing this piece, and you seem to have that skill set or that capability. Could we have a talk? Could we network around this, and could we maybe come to a solution together? So I suppose that's what I mean about the innovating engine, that it is literally like an engine. It's humming all the time with this kind of active activity around the innovation area, and innovation will be the output of that inevitably. It's impossible for it not to happen if there's so much activity happening there. What's that definition of what the innovation will be? That's for another discussion. Is it commercialization? Is it quality improvement? Is it small changes? Is it disruptive technologies? You know, that is for another day, but I've no doubt that will be a natural output if you can cultivate that innovating engine.
Thank you, and no doubt that's obviously this is part of one bigger conversation, just this kind of microcosm of what we're talking about today. Caitriona, thank you very much for joining us. I think it's very important to take stock of healthcare in this space too. And again, look, we all see the difficulties the HSE is under, but there's no doubt that the commitment and the drive by those working in healthcare to better to deliver quality customer service output is undeniable. So thank you very much for joining us today, Caitriona. If you'd like to take a seat. Okay, so we are going to move on to our final speaker, and we're going to hear from Julianne Coughlan, who will be joining us remotely from County Cork, if AV guys are good. Yeah. Perfect. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction to Julianne. So Julianne is Service Design Manager in Cork County Council. Hello, Julianne. And she was part of the working group which developed the recently published design principles for our public service, which Marianne alluded to earlier on. Julianne has led design practices to engage all stakeholders in Cork County Council, most importantly, including staff. She's used design practices to engage and empower staff to develop services, to guide digital transformation, and, of course, to develop Cork County Council's corporate strategy. So we are very happy that Julianne is able to join us remotely from Cork to share her wealth of experience and knowledge on using design practices to engage and empower staff to deliver quality customer service. So, Julianne, take it away.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me okay.
Perfect.
Great, that's great. So sorry I'm not with you in person today, but unfortunately COVID had other ideas about that. So there's COVID in the house here. So I'm hoping that coughing kids and barking dogs won't intrude too much on this presentation as I go through it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our design journey in Cork County Council, what's kind of worked for us over the last few years, and share some lessons that we've learned as well with you as we go. So starting straight into this presentation. So I'm going to mention the team that I lead is called Service Republic. So we're an in-house service design unit in Cork County Council, and we have a few areas of capability. Service design and design thinking is one, business intelligence and reporting is another, and online services and service digitization is the third. And those three things sit quite well together. So I'll take a little bit of time to go through this slide as well, just to explain how things have changed for us over the years. We were brought together originally to digitize services and to get a lot of our services online. Of course, we realized really quickly we had to redesign our services as we were digitizing them. And we'd used business process improvement and lean a lot. We'd a lot of internal efficiencies, but not so much customer facing. So we were looking for another approach, and service design came to the fore at a conference that was attended by one of our senior managers actually a good few years back, and brought the idea back to my team, and we decided we'd try that as a way of transforming services. So we started applying service design and learning the approach to our digital services. We got very confident on that, and that seemed to work really well. And then we kind of flexed our design muscles a little bit, and we started to use design thinking with engagement activities with stakeholders like our public participation network, our older persons council, and our youth council. So key kind of partners that we had in our organization already, and that was a really rewarding experience for us. Then in 2019 it came to developing our new corporate plan, and we thought, let's move design thinking into the area of development of strategy. And we did that, and we had a huge engagement program with stakeholders all over the county, including our staff, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But that really marked a shift for us in the organization, a kind of a cultural transformation really, in that we really felt there was a change in how we were going to work and how we were going to engage with our citizens, communities and businesses and our staff. And then of course, COVID happened, and because my team were very central to digitization of services, we had to refocus our priorities a lot around that area. So a little bit of interruption and disruption to the cultural transformation move there, but we're starting to rebuild that again now, so that's great to see. Just very briefly, so you know, our public participation network, they're a group of voluntary and community groups all over the county. There's about 900 different groups who are members, and they're a very important stakeholder for us as a local authority. They connect us a lot with communities and local areas. So we did a lot of design thinking workshops with them, and those were really interesting. Also with our Older Persons Council and our age-friendly programme. That was fascinating as well, just to see how older people would adapt to a sort of new approach, really engaged, really exciting ideas came out of that workshop. And also with our Youth Council as well. So obviously giving younger people things to be creative with and to experiment with is always a joy to see happening. So some examples of that design interaction there. In terms of the process, our design process is here. It's a double diamond process. You'll probably hear design processes and methodologies described in lots of different ways, but effectively they have the same sort of phases. There's an establish and reflect phase that we've added into this diamond here, but it's about discovering your user needs at the beginning, then honing those in, defining what those are, developing and prototyping really quickly when you come to delivering some results, and you really don't jump to this part of the process as quickly as you would in a lot of more traditional methods for development and delivery of services. You take the time really to do your discovery, to bring your stakeholders together and do your user research. And that's what I suppose sets it aside a lot. And the time you invest here is really, it pays dividends, because you end up with something that's far more fit for purpose, and you can be quite agile and iterative at the develop and deliver stage with your stakeholders. So that is essentially the process that we use in Cork County Council. And what that means in practice, you know, to kind of demystify a lot of that for people, it's really fundamentally about changing the mindset and attitude of the people who are working to deliver our services, working with all of our stakeholders right throughout the journey and the process or project with them. And also really finding a way of using the tools like empathy, journey mapping, all of those things, but building your own process and toolkit that suit your organization, or that suit the specific project that you're actually working on, because you will have to be quite agile and flexible in the approach that you use to do that. But over time, you learn what works for you. So that's a very important thing to remember with the design process. What does successful design look like? Well, I'm going right back to the beginning of our design capability development here with these two services. And the reason I want to mention those is that how we learned the process was using a kind of live learning. So we took two existing services that we had, and we used a service design methodology to actually work on those and to take us through the process of engaging stakeholders in those services, quite different stakeholders. For our community fund, it was those community groups and local voluntary organisations and citizens around the county. And then for housing representations, it was our elected members who would be, say, making representations on behalf of their constituents to the council. So quite different stakeholders. And honestly, it was a scary process for us at the beginning, because the first time you come out from behind the desk and really go out there and meet your stakeholders and ask them, you know, what are their needs? How do you think we could help you? What are we doing well? What could we improve? Those are all things that you're a little intimidated about hearing at the beginning, but also such a rewarding process and a great way for us to learn the design methodology with a live learning process, to be honest. So I'd recommend that for anyone starting out. The results, I won't dwell on it too much, but needless to say, we really did simplify the community fund application process for groups around the county. There were lots of different application forms with very few differences between them. We consolidated those into a single, simpler form. We did digitize the application as it happens, but that wasn't really the end. That wasn't the means to the end that we were looking at when we started it. The main thing was trying to standardize and simplify across the whole county how applications were being taken and how they were being processed. So a very important part of that one was also having a county-wide assessment kind of scoring framework in place around that service too. So design is about looking end to end at a service and not just the pieces of it that different people interact with, but in total, how does it work and what improves the outcomes for customers? So that's community fund. And then with our housing representations, I mean, we had a member of staff and housing dedicated to just entering housing representations on behalf of elected members. And that was really repetitive and unrewarding work for that person. So by working with the elected members themselves to put the system online, it is now 100% online, and they engage themselves and input the representations themselves online. So the need for a member of staff to do that has been eliminated. So that means very practical savings like time, money, postage. It was all manual. So emailing or even posting out responses to elected members is savings that we've made. So, significant savings on a really tiny service. And when we saw that at the beginning, we realized that the impact that design could have on us as an organization. Obviously, measuring the outcomes is very important, and Caitriona did talk about this already in terms of the hard and soft data. And having business intelligence capability in the team is definitely an advantage for us in that we're able to understand from the beginning what sort of data we need to capture in our design of the service. And that's something you have to consider very early on. What questions will you need to answer and how will you do that? So it's about being able to produce the nice dashboards and the reports for managers of our service areas, but also going back and revisiting user research with your stakeholders when you've designed a service, and actually to ask them, what's your experience now? What has worked? What has improved for you? What could we still work on? That's really important information to gather too. And those two things together are very, very powerful. Engaging through disruption. So COVID has taught us a lot of lessons about how we can actually engage our staff and our stakeholders. And I suppose the challenges we face since 2020, these are common to most of us in all of our organizations. Suddenly, all of our staff, or a huge proportion of our staff, were working remotely. And in the design process, a lot of the time, it's about face-to-face, sitting down with stakeholders and having that conversation. So not being able to do that meant it was quite a different engagement process, but we made it work for us nonetheless. We had some changes in our core team over the time. People were redeployed into various other activities. Big requirement to replace face-to-face services as well with online services, just to keep business continuity going where offices were closed and people couldn't come in. And also we had to deliver an awful lot of new online services to support with COVID support services as well. So that put a huge demand on my team as well. As well as that, the kind of, I suppose, the pace of things in COVID was quite reactive. It had to be. And a lot of the time we'd get notice that something needs to be rolled out or introduced or delivered to the public quite quickly, and we'd be able to turn that around. So that was a big challenge. One of the things that happened during COVID too was we also looked at our staff services, and we needed to reduce the amount of paper we were moving around the county hall and the organisation more widely around the whole county for health and safety reasons, if nothing else, during the pandemic. So a lot of stuff went online for staff too. Benefit of that has been things like our blended working application process was digitised quite rapidly earlier this year, and staff just adopted it really easily. There was no issue. They were very used to online services now. And also we were able to look at things like the health and safety assessments, finding a way to integrate that into the online process, and the complete processing of applications and equipment ordering even for staff in certain areas. So the advantage of the design mindset there is just an example where you look more holistically at how things need to happen and all of the kind of dependencies and ancillary services that might be needed to support something. So we were able to roll that out quite well. So some advantages to the good habits we got into during COVID. As I say, huge increase in online services delivered between 2019 and 2020, and also in online service requests from our customers. So almost a doubling of those in those 2 years, between those 2 years. And it's kind of safe to say that the trend is continuing. So the appetite for online services is not going away, and it's something that we know we're going to be building on. We're going to exceed last year's number this year again, and it's just, you know, it's probably the way life is going to be for all of us going forward. What we do know is that good design is vital for good digital services. And how we know that our design approach is assisting in that is we do give customers the opportunity to feedback on our online services all of the time. And we have, overwhelmingly a majority of 5-star rating and 4-star ratings by customers for our online services out of quite a large number, over 4,700 ratings. And those are the kind of things you need to keep an eye on just to see, are you staying on track? So it's been very useful for us to be able to get that feedback too from our customers about our online presence. So how you build resilience, this is worth mentioning because it was a question we asked ourselves during the pandemic. How do we, as a design and innovation team, really stay resilient? And the thing that we found is that our team has quite a mixture of capabilities, and having diversity in our teams and also bringing people in from outside into projects is really important to help you to respond to disruption and even be able to take advantage of it, because we've been able to move things around to prioritize certain areas, pool our resources and mix our capabilities a little differently during the COVID pandemic. So that's been great. And that does kind of speak to something that that Caitriona mentioned too. Design for us isn't really about individuals, it's about our team and having that combination of skills in the team. Very, very important. The kinds of people, I've used this slide a few times, but I do think it's important because attitude generally trumps skills as far as I'm concerned, where you're bringing people into an innovation team or you're trying to build innovation. You're looking for like-minded people. You're looking for people with the right mindset and attitude. So the technology enthusiasts are people who have a vision really for how technology can help, where you have a digitization agenda or where that's part of your portfolio. That's important for us. They mightn't understand the nitty gritty, but they really do know the potential and the vision and things that technology can deliver. The problem collectors, so those people who just love to dig into the why of things and get to the root cause of issues and problems. The creative solution artists, the outside the box thinkers, you definitely need those working with you as well. And then the data people, the data whisperers who really do understand the numbers, love crunching the numbers, and just know what information needs to be captured early on in a process and what data needs to be part of your design. Then the influencers, the people who will go out there and encourage people, give them a little nudge to try something different and be kind of an advocate for what you're doing. So those are the sorts of people you either want in your team or you want to be able to work with as part of design and innovation agenda. And I kind of just going back to this whole definition of design thinking from Mulligan in 2014, it's a synthesis of methods drawn from many fields. And I just think that really gets to the heart of how design thinking and design has worked for us in the council. It's about bringing a lot of different things together in new ways and transcending existing structures and hierarchies, which we all know we need to do really moving forward. The world is changing and we have to change with it. It's very important. The right attitude, I'll just go back to that again, will absolutely take you a long way. I love Gary Larson, so I try to include him in all of my presentations. But this guy, best attitude, king of salespersons, could sell anything to anybody, obviously. But the big difference, I guess, with design and design thinking is user need. This guy doesn't give a fiddlers about user need, obviously. User need just has to be at the forefront with whatever design initiative or with program you're going to undertake. This is Mark and Cliff. They're two road workers from our Middleton office, and I throw Mark and Cliff into my presentations as much as I can too, because they're a great example of working with the right people and people having the right attitude. We did a design project a few years back to look at our intranet and our requirements for a new intranet, and we were told, outdoor workers mightn't engage. They might be intimidated by technology, just be aware. But we went out and we spoke to them and we met Mark and Cliff, and Mark and Cliff were basically going out in their truck and doing road repair work, filling potholes, various things. And they were taking photographs of the road before. They were putting it up on Twitter. They're quite a following locally. And then they were putting up the after picture and basically just showing people the work that they'd done and how they'd done it. So, they were really innovatively using technology themselves and engaging with it. And it was really natural for them to do it. So this preconceived idea that certain people in our organizations or even certain stakeholders might not engage or won't understand what we're trying to do, you really just need to set that aside. So they're a great example of that. Designing strategy and policy, I'm going to just take you through our corporate plan design process, because that was quite new for us, looking at design thinking for strategy. And our chief executive, it's fair to say the design mindset and the people-centeredness is really at the top of our organization, and we're so lucky in that. So, we don't have a lot of convincing or cajoling to do to get people to buy into the approach that we're taking. He wanted our new corporate plan to be designed from the bottom up, for it to be really user-centered, reflect our values, and really engage stakeholders. And so one of the things we said was, okay, reflect our values. That was kind of interesting to us. That was something that hooked us straight away. How are we going to get to the root of that? How are we going to understand people's values? So we actually got a clinical psychologist to come in to work with our team for a bit to think about how we'd actually structure that engagement. What way would we approach stakeholders and what would we talk to them about? And how would we actually ascertain that? And we ended up going out to our stakeholders with a really open question. The question was, what matters to you? And when we were talking about, building our corporate plan, and we started with that question, lots of people came into workshops, meetings, interviews, discussions with us and looked at us like we had two heads when we said, what matters to you? But it was really important because it actually was almost like taking a step back again, in terms of defining the problem, and instead of looking for, problem framing, opportunities, all of that, going to the very heart of what matters to you and working up from there. That was very important. So we did actually manage to frame our corporate plan around that question, which was, a significant departure from how we had developed it before, and a really open way to start that engagement with our stakeholders. Why values are important? I mean, we've understood since that, values underpin what we do and how we do it. We know that, and having a strategy that really does connect with the values of both our stakeholders outside the organization, but also our staff inside, it just gives it so much more power and impact. And also, in the midst of disruption, values are also quite resilient. So we also, I suppose, that was proven to us during COVID too. Even though there might be a lot of change in what we have to focus on, how we prioritize what we're doing, and different initiatives, programs, supports, all those things we had to do, the values of our stakeholders and staff are still resilient through all of that. So our corporate plan then retains that relevance and resilience as well, as a result of being built from those values. So that's why we started with values. So we kind of knew how we were going to approach our questioning. So then the big starting question for any design project is, how do you engage people, and how much engagement is enough? We always start with that initial question. And honestly, for something like this, we hadn't done it before. Kind of like the person who answered this question and didn't have the answer, but did something anyway. We did the same thing. So we basically said, okay, we're just going to start, and we're going to do something, and we're going to see how it works. And sometimes the leap of faith thing is the thing that you just have to do. So we did a variety of different kinds of engagement with as many different people as we could. We had workshops, we had interviews, we went to local libraries, we tried to talk to the public there, we did surveys, we brought special interest groups into the mix as well. And then importantly, we actually engaged our staff, hugely engaged our staff for this exercise too. So that was really significant. And that was important as well, because our local staff and local area offices all around the county are people who live in those local areas too. So they're actually citizens and local people in those areas. So their perspective was really interesting to us too. Those local staff kind of told us, we know the community, they're going out there each day and meeting the people who are coming into offices to talk to them about things. We're serving local friends and neighbours, and our heart is in our work. So they were a really interesting stakeholder group during the engagement process for the corporate plan this year, or in 2019, sorry, this time around. The design process itself, sorry, now I'm really flying through these, but I do need to keep going quite fast. So we ended up, as I say, having lots of different engagement activities and bringing people into the discussion, what matters to you, starting with that, building on that. We ended up with thousands of post-its, actually. Thousands of post-its. And then part of the design process was for us to synthesize all of that input and to try to ascertain the themes that were coming through from those sessions. And they did start to emerge. After enough engagement, we started to get a clear view of the themes that were important to different stakeholders in terms of our corporate plan. What we then needed to do, I suppose, was to take the output that we had and present it back up to senior managers in our organization so that they could connect to and relate to what people were saying. And, we didn't want it to be kind of happy clappy, what matters to you for senior managers. Sometimes you need to be conscious of the way you need to present information to particular stakeholders and audiences as well. So we took the kind of very qualitative stuff and we presented it back quite quantitatively, lots of charts and graphs. We used our BI skills there. And that just, was another important thing for us to remember going forward doing design work like this, is how you present your design outputs. That can be just as important as what you're actually trying to say to people with them. And consider your audience and what will make it easier for them to understand and connect with the process. So that's an important lesson learned by us as well in this whole project. Generally, some other takeaways, people do love engagement. Once we started talking to staff and they were a little cautious about coming to workshops about the corporate plan initially, it was kind of like, oh God, how am I going to fit this into all the other things I have to do? But word got around and in the end, we people kind of contacting us going, is there any room in this one? Can we come along? So that was great. Same with our stakeholders. They really liked us sitting down and talking openly with them about what we could do for them and what mattered to them as citizens, businesses, individuals and communities in the county. Be flexible in your approach. You get better at that the more of this stuff you do. So you might have to tweak your language, you might have to tweak the tools you're using as you go through engagements and workshops, and that's all part of learning the design process. And as you say, you need to maybe even do that on the fly sometimes, depending on how a session is going. So that's something you learn, and it is trial and error. There's no recipe for a lot of this, I have to say. Strategy and policy as well matter to people, which was a nice thing for us to know. We often wonder if our corporate plan is something that people even care about after we've put it together. But this time we had a real sense that people could see themselves and their values reflected in it. So it obviously had much more resonance with them and really did matter. And then just in general, I suppose, keep engaging, use a design approach any way you can. That's something that we're going to do. That's going to be our kind of mantra going forward. If we get an opportunity to do design in a project, we'll do it, because that's how you learn it, and you learn how to use it in different ways as well. So when we were reviewing our corporate plan last year, we actually went back and had those discussions and conversations again with some stakeholders and staff about what it was like for them, you know, over the last couple of years with COVID, and how they felt the challenges they came up against, the opportunities maybe. And even just from staff, we got really nice insights. So technology was a lifesaver. We know that's come through in the last few years, and that certainly has changed how our staff and are working, and how we're working is very different. Community calls. So we as a local authority, we kind of coordinated the response to COVID with lots of different agencies, HSE, Gardaí, and local community groups, brought them all together and met regularly and created this forum where people could help each other. And that was a really interesting way to work. And then people just told us of the personal impact as well. You know, I've experienced the positive work of the council. Sometimes communication, as Caitriona mentioned, is such a challenge for all of us. And like, we don't often get the message out about all of the good stuff that we do. That's a big, big problem for us. But actually, COVID really did highlight a lot of that for people. We became a kind of focal point in local communities quite a lot. And our own staff started learning about things we did that they didn't realise the council was responsible for. So that was interesting. And then, not to throw everything out after the COVID experience, that, you know, we redeployed staff into different areas. We had them working differently, and they really appreciated the opportunity to do that. So that should be something maybe we're not so afraid of doing going forward as well, and not be quite so rigid in our structures and the way that we lay out our functions as an organisation. This is just a slide I put in because I know that we have the design principles for government just recently published. These panels, these long panels, might be very hard for people to see them, but they're the 10 design principles. And then I've mapped against those our 12 quality customer service principles. And I suppose the thing I just want to say to people really is that all these different ways of describing things and initiatives, and we can get a little bogged down with all that sometimes, but the thing that really comes through when you look at these is that we're all moving the same direction, and as a public service we are all moving the same direction, and we're doing a lot of these really good things really well already. So I think we do need to recognize that. So that's just something I wanted to say. And the sort of evolution we've had in the council in terms of design and how that's worked for us, I think that in the wider public sector we can really see that happening now. So that's extremely exciting, and it's great to see that happening, and we'll all hopefully learn from our mutual experiences as well, which will be great. We are still learning. There's no doubt about it. There's so much to learn in how you can use design and design thinking in organizations, and not least of which for us is really about transforming the culture and understanding that how we're going to work is changing and changing forever, in a really positive way, and giving people empowerment, opportunity, and all of those things is so important. Things then like our design principles for government and also the quality customer service principles, they kind of help us stay focused on what matters. They're the what matters in many ways at a very high level. So they're things to remember. as we strive to transform and to innovate. I really hope I haven't gone over time too much, but thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Julianne. I really appreciate to get some insights kind of on how design principles are kind of being used around Ireland in a local government context. And it's really, one of the things that I really took from was kind of how the importance of values are really, really central to how kind of you operate, and that's really, really important. And they are the most important part of resilience, and that they form the backbone of it. So that's fantastic to see. And certainly that is going to be something central as we go into next kind of era of public service transformation, as Marianne was saying, how important it is for us as we kind of go into that next chapter. So thank you very much for joining us. Julianne, you're going to stay with us. In the interest of time, I think we're just going to pivot straight into the panel discussion. So we're going to invite on our three speakers from today back on stage with Marianne. And Julianne, you're going to stick with us for a few minutes. So bear with us, folks, as we swap over the stage.
I think we lost Richard, so and Julianne, you're behind. I found today absolutely fascinating, so thank you very much, and thanks to all of you, really, as you've presented a different aspect of quality customer service, how you bring that forward. And Julianne, I'm going to start, like, for me, the next step obviously is the quality customer service network. You've got the 12 principle, you've got the design principle. I love the fact that you've lined them up and showed the visual, because, you know, sometimes all those aspects are connected. But can I, in terms of bringing that collective innovation and that transformation, can I reverse the question to you and say what matters to you? What it is that you think, as we move into the next stage of transformation and reinvigorate those customer service principles, those design, what matters?
That's an interesting one. I suppose it's really kind of sustaining and embedding the design and people-centeredness, I think, in our organisations. For us, starting off as an innovation unit within and design unit within the council, it gave us a kind of focal point, a way to start focusing our effort and building the capacity and all of that. But what we can see is that in order to really have an impact and to achieve that sort of transformation that I mentioned at the end, that cultural transformation, we have to start spreading the initiative, spreading the capability, spreading the mindset of design and design thinking much further outside of our own team, outside our directors, even outside our organisations, and having people then willing to work with us in that sort of environment. That's really what matters, I think. Next, from our point of view, it's embedding and scaling really the design and the principles beyond our own team. And we've started to do that, but there's a lot more to do to get that just becoming something people understand and know and take as this is how we work and this is what we do.
Okay. And Caitriona, you talked about scaling as well, the challenge of scaling in dispersed organisation. Can you, going beyond the HSE, how do you scale all that learning, all that good things across the public service as a collective? Because the users, they interact with many of us here. So how do you make sure that the experience is consistent across?
Yeah, and I suppose we talk about trying to break down silos all the time, so we have to be accountable for that ourselves as well in the way that we behave. And I'm always pestering Julianne because we're both Cork-based, so I'm always trying to hook her in and see if she'll let me get on board with some of the things she's doing, or if she'll get on board with some of the things we're doing. Because I suppose I feel really strongly that, patients are citizens, and citizens are patients, and that really the walls of the hospital don't define people engaging in healthcare, and equally people retain their citizenship from Cork City or Cork County when they're admitted to the CUH. And so even though we haven't kind of formally had those pledged those allegiances to one another, or looked at really tangible ways that we can work across the two different sectors. And speaking specifically here around from what Julianne does in Cork County Council, it's a personal drive for me. If you talk about what matters to me, I suppose I'm a bit of a public service brat. My dad was a public servant. I'm a public servant. I feel really, really proud of it, and I really believe in it. I believe in public service. So I would really love and welcome the opportunities. And I hear all the time opportunities coming up talking about trauma-informed practice, and Cork has just been named a trauma-informed city. So I'm thinking there's a lot of these pieces that are starting to emerge that are pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, that surely there is some way of us harnessing that potential and harnessing that activity to deliver great outcomes that has an and impact across multiple levels of all the different sectors.
That's great. And Emer, you talked earlier about the course, that it's not about just the course, it's an ethos. And how do you do that kind of connection, that cultivating that culture beyond just the courts?
Again, I think it's just talking to each other and recognizing the commonalities of what we do in the public service. And as Julianne said, people love to engage. And when you can create an opportunity for the conversation, it's amazing what can happen. We're working with private sector consultants and developers, and just speaking about the Family Law Reform Programme, at the beginning when we were speaking to them, we said, this is an opportunity to change the lives of the person sitting on the bus beside you, because family law breakdown is a normal part of life, and it's okay that relationships ebb and flow and fail, because that's just being human. And we need to change our mindset around that. But when we talk to people, they see the spark. They see what Ireland could be if we all have a little bit of that focus on the bits and pieces that we do, and say, do you know what, we want to make this better for us. Well, so do we. We want to make it better too. So maybe we can talk to each other. And now link Julianne in with the HSE and with the court service and with revenue and social protection, and create an interconnected public service that wants to deliver just a better Ireland. So that's an easy goal. I'm sure you'll have that done in no time.
Next Tuesday.
And we talked, obviously culture is critical, and you all talked about metrics and measurements, and we all talk about impact. How do you change the culture with those metrics? Obviously the story that you said, you explained, Caitriona, around the cost saving, that's great. But the new nose and the little girl and are being back into the community, that's even more powerful. How do you communicate that message to the highest level, so as that's the kind of matrix that are expected from them?
Yeah, and I think storytelling is so important, and I love that that quote, there's no stories without data, and there's no data without stories. I think that's really important, and we're becoming, and we need to become, much more data-driven, particularly in health, and I'm sure in all the other areas, because it will open opportunities for us to engage in AI, machine learning, deliver lots of changes that we can't replicate through human, just bringing more people into post. But yeah, it can be difficult that's the buy-in piece that I talked about earlier, that sometimes the stories aren't good enough, that it's considered a nice to have, and then we need to back it up with the data. But certainly from the Spark programme's point of view, we've seen that the organisations or parts of the organisation that have taken a data plus design together approach to how they deliver change and innovation have had the most success, where they've come in there, they've captured that data, they've got their baseline, they've got their figures, they take maybe a lean approach initially to remove some of the inefficiencies and deliver change that way, and then start to look at, well, with what's left, when we've taken out the pieces that we can, and then these are the bits that we have to deliver, how can we take a design approach to how might we deliver the services within these constraints or with the capabilities we have, or what might we need in order to really enhance service delivery. So I think it's about that kind of idea of making sure that you have the stories and the data, and that you have, you know, activity around both of those areas in order to be able to talk to the audiences, as Julianne said, you know, knowing your audience, knowing who you're trying to convince, what they value in terms of reporting, whether that's story data or numerical data. That's really important.
Okay, that's great. And Julianne, you've a business intelligence unit in Service Republic. So how do you manage that kind of not the tension, but the business intelligence, the hard data and the qualitative data? Any nugget of wisdom you can share with us?
I suppose I should say when we say business intelligence unit, it might be overselling it. Small. We're actually a really small team. There's only 8 of us in the team in total. So there are some people with business intelligence expertise, and we all have design. I suppose the advantage is we do all have design underpinning all of those other specialities, and that probably allows things like people who need to understand what data we capture or we need to build into reports, and how that's going to come through, and what we'll be able to do with that in a dashboard or in a report at the end. It's really great having the design capacity, that they understand that, and that helps us then to pull that all of the way through our service from one end to the other. The same for digitizing services. So the people who are actually building those forms and putting things online are people who understand design and the design process, and have themselves had to go out and meet stakeholders and talk to users and ask them what their experience of using our services is. So I think design is kind of the commonality there. Maybe having people who have those very maybe specific skills, have that broader understanding of the customer experience, is the thing that makes it work well. So get your data people out meeting stakeholders. That's the advice. That's the nugget I'd give, because you know the spreadsheets will only tell them so much, but when they're face to face with someone who has to use their services, and the same people building the services as well, it's a powerful thing, putting them in front of the users, you know, and the stakeholders.
That's great. I'm just conscious is there a question here in the audience now that we have all our speakers? No? No? Okay. And just in terms of the next step of the quality customer service, the charters, etc., where do you see the initiative that you've just described? So you've the design, you've got the capability building, the trauma-informed organization, you've got the innovation and the pathway. How do you see it all connecting?
That's a scary question. Wow. It comes back to the commonalities. There is so much that's actually common within all of those ways of working. They each bring a little kind of bit of flavour, a different flavour, but there's a lot of commonalities in it. And for me, I think one of the great things is that it's not difficult to understand these concepts. You know, you don't... They're simple enough ways of working. So for me, I would love to see them start filtering down to people, and for people to be allowed to use them in their day-to-day work. You can use it in very small ways. It doesn't have to be big transformational projects, but if we can empower the people that work in our organisations to have an understanding of what design is, and to have an understanding of innovation, and to have an understanding of trauma-informed and all of those things, it'll just generate more interest, more conversations, more ideas, and those connections that we're trying to build, maybe at different levels, might start happening further down throughout organisations, because the court service frontline staff might now make connections with the social protection frontline staff. And if they've got a common language in terms of design and innovation and the vision that we have for a better Ireland, that's where I think the magic will happen.
Very good.
I agree with everything that you've just said, but I think maybe specifically around the network, I mean, I would have to hold my hands up and say I wasn't as familiar with the network as I should be, having worked in the HSE for nearly 20 years, that it wasn't hugely in my awareness that this was here. And so for me to add on an extra element, to me this is grounding, this is being able to make statements that what we're trying to do is built into policy. We have a policy around delivering excellence to customers. So actually, maybe the people who don't like the storytelling as much as the data, we can use the Quality Customer Service Network and those 12 guiding principles, I suppose, to reinforce and to scaffold our offering and say, you know, this is important. It's important to the person. We have the testimonials to say they believe in it, but they don't. That's not only. In fact, at an organisation, at a government level, we have a remit to deliver excellence in terms of customer service. So it's a great security. It's another place that we can go to hang, another anchor for the type of work that we do. So it's really important.
Okay, and Julianne?
Yeah, I agree 100% with everything that everybody's saying there. But in reality too, just coming back to a point that was made about the quality customer service principles and then also the design principles and all of these other things. I mean, it can be intimidating for people working in the public sector as there are so many pillars, themes, objectives, principles. I mean, in the end, across so many different strategies, and there is definitely benefit in consciously connecting those things together as much as you can and understanding we're doing this here and that absolutely is relevant to what is being said there. You know what I mean? Really stitching those things together, I think, is something we should put a little bit more energy and effort into in the public service overall, so that we can all see that we are part of something that is quite connected. If we are talking about innovating and we are talking about building relationships and working together, then I think our strategies and policies and all of those things should also reflect all those connections, because if we don't see them there, then it's another way that separates us out a little when it doesn't necessarily have to. So as much as possible, we need to make those connections and show that we're all working as part of a big movement, really, to put customers at the centre of everything we're doing.
That's great, actually. And we just when we were preparing the session with Breen, with the chair of the Quality Customer Service, it's funny you finished on this, because that idea of movement and getting the buy-in and is very central to what he said to me as well. So he would be delighted. He was due to chair this session, so I hope I did injustice. So I think we're coming. I see my colleague that were telling me we're coming to a close. Thank you very much. Margaret is going to do the. Oh, sorry. Oh, the logistic. He did brief me very well earlier to say, I go first and then Margaret. And then so Eoin is going to introduce Margaret. But just for my part, thank you very much. And today is about connection, so do get in touch with the network, do get in touch with the team in Deeper. We're moving to the next phase of transformation. We've learned quite a lot today around, you know, how the pieces are connecting, and I'm really looking forward to working with you, all of you. So thank you very much.
Perfect, yeah. Thank you very, very much for that, Marianne and panellists. Thank you so much for your contributions today. It's been extraordinary. I think my key takeaway from today myself is that I don't think we need to look far we just need to look inward. We don't need to do a lot of work in that regard. Our best assets are our employees and what they have to offer in terms of what we can offer the public that we serve. So I want to thank you very much. I've been asked to kind of jump in last minute, always a little daunting, but very, very appreciative of your patience today. It was really, really nice to meet you all. I've seen so many names and I've met so many of you online over the course of the past year and a half, so it's so lovely to put faces to names. You've been a fantastic crowd. I just want to say that we will have tea, some more refreshments for you if you want to hang about afterwards and still catch up with your colleagues from today. I'd like to thank Farmleigh, who've been on who've hosted us so well, helped us all get into the festive spirit. Thank Marianne, kind of for the work that she's doing, leading us down this road, and kind of ensuring that we've senior stakeholder kind of buy-in, and again to the broader team, to Philip, especially to Nora, to Colin, who kind of keep the engine running as the year goes round. That shouldn't be underestimated either. And of course, the previous iteration of this team, in this area, headed up by Grace O'Regan, who was with us earlier. I'm not sure if she still is, but their contribution and their work shouldn't be undervalued. So I'm going to hand back over again, say thank you so much, and it was so lovely to meet you all. I'm going to hand over now for the official closing remarks back to Margaret O'Connor.
So it's just me between tea and the door. I won't keep you long. I'd like to thank all our presenters for their fantastic presentations and for giving their time today. I have been absolutely fascinated all afternoon. The time has flown. It's been a really, really engaging session. So thank you to everybody there. What we've heard in terms of today has really given us impressive insights into how our colleagues are enabling their teams to be responsive to our customers' needs and to deliver excellent service. Essentially, we're all branches of the same tree, and by having these guiding principles to hold us all together, it helps to ensure that there's consistency in that experience for the citizen. We're all citizens, and as citizens, we all have levels of responsibility and we all have levels of entitlement. And we, as a large organisation in terms of the public service, have a responsibility to ensure that people understand those obligations and entitlements and provide them in a way that's clear and accessible for all. And I think what today has really shown us is it's possible, it's being done, and we all have a great opportunity to learn from each other on that front. I'd like to echo what Marianne said earlier, that we need to find ways to strengthen the Quality Customer Service Initiative to ensure that it continues to support and deliver on these principles. If we think about what Caitriona was saying about that innovating engine, there's an element there in terms of the work that we do through this network and in terms of the change that happens in this network with the teams that come in place and drive it and all the members who come on board. There's an innovating engine there that's purring, and I suppose it's all our role to ensure that it's oiled, that it's getting the fuel that it needs, that it changes to whatever it needs to change to move from fossil fuel, and that we I could keep that analogy going all day. Sorry for stealing it, Caitriona, but it puts us in a great position moving forward to know that we're going to be in a position to serve the customer of the future. I was very taken today by a few points that I'm going to mention. I was very taken when Marianne spoke this morning about the principles of design being close to her heart, because it struck me that really the principles of the design are central to all of our work and should be central to all of our hearts as we do our work to ensure that we are delivering a service that meets all those needs of our citizens. Dustin spoke to us about trust and service delivery, and if you think about any relationship in your life, if the trust isn't good, the relationship isn't good. So, when we know that service delivery can drive trust and that there's a link of 67 points, I mean, that's fairly massive, and it just tells us that it's really important that we continue to focus on building that trust. And the OECD survey told us that for younger people, trust isn't maybe as strong as it is with the older generation. So I think we have a body of work to do there in terms of understanding young people. Emer and Richard, fantastic insight. I have to say that was a real light bulb for me around the trauma-informed design. I'm familiar with the idea in other contexts, and it's just an eye-opener to think of it in terms of service delivery across the whole public service. But it made sense. And, Emer made the statement that we're all humans dealing with humans. And it's like, yeah, of course that's obvious, but sometimes we don't think about that when we're designing. So it's important that we all keep an awareness of that. Caitriona spoke about the engine, but she also spoke about giving agency and a voice to frontline staff, which I think is something that's really important. And, you know, we should be asking ourselves, are we really listening to those voices? Because I think that's where the magic happens. And finally, Julianne, when she was speaking about how we measure outcomes, she spoke about how important it is to validate what we design with the customer. And again, that's something that maybe that's a blunt edge that we all need to look at in terms of how we bring things together. So ultimately, the common thread is about putting customers at the centre of what we do and really understanding that. And whatever that customer looks like, whether that's our end user, whether that's other organisations that we're dealing with, whoever our customer is, it's important that they're put at the centre. So I'm now going to move on to the thank you part, and you'll have the opportunity to get your blood flowing again with some rounds of applause. I want to specifically single out Eoin, who was asked to do MC at short notice yesterday, and it is like he has been preparing for weeks for this. He was so smooth and seamless, so big round of applause for Eoin. I'd like to thank our QCSN members from across our 160 member organisations who joined us in person and online today. So that's a round of applause for yourselves. Your questions were excellent and the engagement was fantastic. I'd also like to thank the team at Deeper. So Marianne, Eoin, who we've already mentioned, Philip, Colin and Nora. Nora, you are the glue that holds the whole thing together. So our next QCSN meeting is going to take place in the spring. The team will be in contact with you in the new year with further details. They're also going to be in contact around the design principles. So there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up, and we look forward to everybody staying as engaged as you have been. So it leaves me just to say Happy Christmas, Happy New Year, and thank you for being here today.